the New Britain Board of Education, providing students with a high-quality education.
So I'd like to call this meeting to order, January 10th, 2022. Good evening. You could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Santana, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Solana, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gail Sanders Conley.
Here.
Mr. Merrill Day.
Here.
Mr. Anthony Kane with a C.
Here.
Ms. Monica Dawkins.
Here.
Mr. Anthony Kane.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Listro.
Here.
Mr. Matthew Marino.
Here.
Ms. Annie Carter.
Here.
Ms. Diana Reyes.
Here.
Ms. Tina Santana.
Here. All right, if we could just have a moment of meditation. Thank you. Do we have anybody on for public participation?
I'm not seeing any phone numbers.
I'll ask one more time. Anybody on for public participation? You would need to unmute your phone. One more time. Anybody on for public participation? Okay. So moving on to item F, election of board secretary. Do you have any nominations for board secretary?
I'd like to nominate Anthony Kane with a C.
I would like to nominate Diana Reyes.
Okay. Thank you. So all in favor of Mr. Anthony Kane with a C? All those in favor of Miss Diana Reyes? How do we do? Oh, 3, 4, 5. We must do this 3 times. So do I have a nomination for board secretary?
Right.
I'd like to nominate Joey Listro for secretary.
That was Miss Reyes.
I'd like to nominate Anthony Kane with a C.
All those in favor of Mr. Kane with a C? All those in favor of Mr. Listro? I do feel like I need to say, in order for us to move on, we were going to do this every meeting for the next however many meetings. So, congratulations, Mr. Listro. If you would like to move over, or you could stay there.
I'm okay here, thank you.
All right. So next, we do need to go into executive session for items A and B. So I'd like to make a motion. I don't know if I can make a motion. All right, make a motion to go into executive session to discuss item A, pending litigation, Jane Doe versus Board of Education, with Attorney Joe Skelly in person. Tom Gerard will be joining us online, I believe. Superintendent Sarah and Miss Mary Ellen Manning. Second. And I'd also like to make a motion for item B to go into executive session. We could discuss A and B with the same parties. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. So we will go into an executive session. Annie, Monica, and Diana And I believe Superintendent Sarah and Ms. Manning, she'll bring you into a breakout room. We will be back. So we are back in session. So item B, do I have a motion?
I move that we settle item B.
All right, so make a motion to pay the amount of $1,606.24 to Maritza Hernandez Feliciano for damages to her motor vehicle.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, may I have a motion to go in executive session for item C to discuss the legal settlement with Attorney Nicole Fluckiger, Miss Mary Ellen Manning, Mr. Kevin Kane, the full board, and Superintendent Sarah.
Motion for item C.
Motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll be back. We are back in session. We have a motion for item C.
Motion to settle item C.
In the amount of $220,279.20.
272.20, you were close.
Yeah.
So the motion is settle workers' comp claim for 272.20. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Superintendent Sarah, you are up.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to ask Mike Warren to start. When Mike is done, I'm going to jump on with the rest of the report.
Good evening, everyone. It's certainly with some mixed feelings that I'm informing you that I have notified Superintendent Sarah of my plans to retire from the school district effective the end of August. I feel certainly tremendously privileged and honored to have spent 35 years in the school district. It has been a great gift to me and my family to be able to serve the students and families and to work with all the outstanding educators that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years, and certainly all the students. I am very much committed to a smooth transition at the end of this year. I am committed to the next eight months or so of work with the district and the work that I will do to support the new leadership team. I will not slow down. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to work with all of you, but especially with all the tremendous educators that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last 35 years, and more importantly, the thousands of just unbelievable students that I've had the opportunity to work with. So, thank you.
Madam President, may I make a quick comment? 30 years ago next month, I walked into a Slade School substitute teaching for the very first time. Very nervous, very scared. I was covering a history class. The guy in the room right next to me was Mike. He guided me, gave me a lot of advice. You're too young to retire, Mike. Because if you retire, that means I'm almost old enough to retire. So, wish you well. Thank you, Mike, for all you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And just kind of going right off of that, Mike and I didn't really know each other that well because he was up in high school and I was down in elementary. And we started having conversations probably, 8 years ago.
Can we turn it up somehow?
It's as high as it goes.
Or if you can get a little closer to the mic, that might help.
Me?
Yeah.
Seriously, you can't hear me?
We can't hear you, seriously, I know.
How about now? You better?
That's as loud as it goes.
That's about it.
All right, and I'll talk very loud, but you're going to hear me from your office. But I always say we are the best working marriage going. We see things very similarly. There isn't a child that we say we can't keep trying. And there has to be a space and a place for every kid to show what they've got. And being in education is very rewarding. And I can say, Mike, even beyond high school, I see what you do for the young men and women in town. And it's never giving up, right? And I think that that is probably the most admirable trait, and one that, I've learned from Mike, and I think that we really balance each other out. So Mike, I can't thank you enough for everything, and really for being my work husband for last.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm not going to say too much because we're still got a lot of time together and
Yeah.
a little bit emotional, but I appreciate all that you've done for me and for these students as well. And it's been a tremendous, tremendous team, certainly. And I think, not to jump ahead of where we're going here, but we're leaving in the district in great shape, and hopefully the next superintendent will be named in a timely manner. The timing of this prepares that time, and hopefully the board will move in a timely manner so that we can have a smooth transition to the next leadership team.
Thanks, Mike. Good segue. And so mine is a little bit longer. I do want to read into record, so I'm hoping that you can hear. And even if you can't, Kristen, I know that we have this in recording. Board President Conley, Vice President Gay, and Board of Education members, I wanted to tell you all personally that I will be retiring as superintendent of the New Britain Schools as of June 30th, 2022. It's been a very productive 6 years. And I'm proud of the accomplishments we, all of us, together on the screen, all of my admins and staff, have made towards the collective vision of pursuing excellence for all New Britain students. I'd like to outline some of our major accomplishments that we've made over the last 6 years. We've created and delivered a comprehensive pre-K-12 curriculum that meets the needs of the 21st century learner and is aligned with our profile of graduate attributes, as well as the Common Core standards that are the framework for the culturally responsive, student-centered curriculum. We've created and built a district-wide schedule structure, kindergarten through grade 12, that allows all core teachers the opportunity to meet weekly to enhance their instructional practice by way of New Britain University, or what we like to call NBU time. While this is our 3rd year engaging in NBU, our teachers continue to work toward practices that are student-centered, allowing students the opportunities for discourse, ownership of their learning, and an overall more engaging class environment, all founded on the Common Core of teaching. We have a guarantee that all students are receiving enrichment via weekly STEAM coursework, pre-K through grade 8, with a focus of hands and lines-on learning. Thank you, Sandra, for that phrase. So that they are prepared for career readiness and ready for our academies at New Britain High School. I'm extremely proud of the creation of our Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology Academy. This was made possible through our fundraising efforts and wonderful partnerships that we've had with our local businesses. We currently have about 500 students enrolled in manufacturing, engineering, and technology coursework. We have a continued focus on our Finance Academy, our Health Academy, and now a Public Service Academy, all at New Britain High School. Students are so lucky to have opportunities to be a part of an academy model, which we see often at our magnet schools, but more importantly, a comprehensive high school. Wonderful teachers and staff at New Britain High shepherding our kids through these very, very challenging times, not only in education, but across our world as we have struggled with a pandemic for the last 3 years. Very proud that we have restored culinary arts, IT, and technology courses, including the building of these rooms in our largest middle school. We can't forget about VILA, and we have to make sure in the future, for all of you staying, that we ensure that our VILA students have similar opportunities. We've applied for and received 4 Commissioner Network grants that have allowed us to recruit and retain highly qualified staff, instructional coaches, both in the humanities and the sciences, to support our teachers as they implement a new curriculum and real-time application of the skills that they're learning in NBU. I'm proud that we listen as a cabinet to our staff. We recognize that at any given time, there will be people who are not happy. That's going to tell, but it has never been that our doors were closed. We open our doors, we listen to our stakeholders. That's hopefully something that we've built, that the majority of our staff feel comfortable knowing that our doors are open, they have been open, and our ears are open, and we listen. I'm very proud of our Latinos in Action courses, grades 6 through 12, that provide an opportunity for our majority students to engage in courses beginning in middle school with a focus on growing Latino leaders. The courses require all students to give back to their community via community-wide public service. Ongoing mentorship and tutoring for our littles, all while learning the many great contributions of our Latino leaders. CCSU also has a strong LIA presence on their campus. We've invested over $1.5 million in our music programming, putting instruments into students' hands where there didn't used to be. The creation of and the continuation of our nationally recognized summer enrichment program. Thank you, Jen, and your team. Created in 2012, Summer Enrichment Experience, or C, Create and Extreme, now serve over 1,000 students every summer in full-day programming in partnership with our 20-plus nonprofit organizations. And those numbers continue to grow. It's a testament to the work we've done, that they are ready, they fill in their RFP, and we have new people joining us every year. We've increased our 4-year graduation rate from 70, approximately, I'm not going to give you the 10, 70% in 2015 to 78% in 1920, and our unofficial graduation rate for 2020-2021 is 84%. We've also increased our 6-year graduation rate from 68% in 2012 to 82% in 1920. That's data that's hard to refute. Progress is being made. District-wide, we have decreased our suspension rate from 13.5% in 2015 to 8.9% in 2019. I'd like to talk a little bit about our preparing our staff and students for a new way of learning during a pandemic. No one could imagine prior to March 13, 2020, that we would need to recreate a school system that could continue to reach and teach all of our students, either remotely or in person. Back in March 2020, there was no historical research or practice that could help shape what the pandemic normal would look like. So in March 2020, probably 15 to 20 person team to started to problem solve. And if there's only problem moments for me. But we live what we ask our students to do. If there's a problem, we're going to figure it out. And we may not be perfect, but we're better than we were. So in March 2020, more than 2,000 families were without internet access at their home. We were not a one-to-one student-to-tech device district, and we knew that the majority of our teachers and families and students would require tech support and training to deliver and receive instruction. And only giving that one bullet point, we could go on for hours about the effort of Jeff Prokop and his team, Laura Volpe, Amy Anderson, Wanda Litwart, and her team. what we did for social emotional wellness, and our outreach. March through August 2020, daily meetings to ensure all students had access to the internet, a new one-to-one device, comprehensive trainings available for all staff. This was year-round. When people are working 10 months a year, our staff stepped up, came to these trainings so that they would be prepared for students in August of 2020. March to the present day. We continue to have daily meetings to discuss the physical health of all of our staff and students. Ensuring our March 2020 ventilation system would rival the coronavirus. When we began 3 years ago, it was a real heavy lift to bring our ventilation system where they needed to be. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our former facilities director, Kevin Dion, for stepping in to the middle of a tornado and helping us navigate and get our buildings safe and ready for all of our students. Thousands of dollars in man-hours were spent ensuring we had adequate ventilation, adequate supplies, and all buildings were COVID ready for the hybrid reopening of our school in September 2020. We had ongoing town hall meetings for staff, for families, for community members, to keep them abreast of all current realities and changes as we navigated through the ever-changing pandemic. We expanded our partnerships with our mental health community partners, hiring over 200 support staff in our buildings to prepare for a full school reopening in August 2021. And we continue to manage daily operations, contact tracing, staffing shortages, substitute teacher shortages, upset parents, upset staff, and every day, New Britain staff comes ready. Principals, I can't thank you enough. Staff, teachers, parents, custodians, all of you, for following our leadership over these last 3 years. I'm very proud of our budget that reflects the community, the family vision of pursuing excellence for every New Britain student. For some, it may not be important, but for those of us who work with all children, expanding our continuum of services so that every student felt success has been critically important. And while that may not get public recognition, it certainly gets individual family recognition and gratitude for the work that our staff has put in place to help our students who struggle the most. We've increased our grant dollars outside of the ESSER and ARP, but through grant writing, thanks to Founder Sanford, her team, and the partnership office that expand those dollars so that we can bring in more staff, because that is the best resource we will ever get. We have continued savings of approximately $6.6 million in regular transportation by going out to bid in 2017, which was not a popular thing to do. Over the last 3 years, with the current regular transportation contract, the district expended $16 million for an average annual expenditure of $5.3 million in comparison to the prior 3 years. With the previous transportation contract, the district expended $22.7 million for an average annual of $7.7 million. Continued savings of just under $1 million in copier savings by going out to bid in 2017, thanks to our MIS department. Over the last 3.5 years of the current copier contract, the district expended $799,000 for an average annual expenditure of $228,000. In comparison to the prior 3.5 years, with previous copier contracts, the district expended $1.5 million for an average expenditure of $440,000. We have created processes. Again, hard to take a picture of that, but we have worked for the last 8 years on creating process, procedures across our departments and schools to ensure accountability. Ensuring the evaluation of staff was aligned to the district's mission and vision. Negotiating union contracts from 2016 to 2021 that are fair and fiscally responsible. A return of our excess cost savings dollars to our district estimated at about $3.2 million every year beginning in 2019. That is thank you to a board that decided this was our money. And the same can be said for our board that decided going out to bid for a more rigorous bid process to get better rates for transportation. Those are millions of dollars, thanks to the board's voting. Continued presence at the state level to ensure the renovations of our schools will continue with a higher percentage of reimbursement to our city. While Chamberlain Elementary is currently being renovated, funds for Holmes Elementary are already secured, as are dollars for plastic and slate roofs. An additional $25 million was awarded for a preschool addition at Chamberlain Elementary, because we understand that education we know starts at birth, but here in Britain, pre-K, we are a pre-K-12 system, knowing that bringing in our youngest learners and having them work together is better outcomes and better graduation rates as we move along. While my retirement from the school district is with mixed emotions, I'm very excited to see what's next. I'll always remember the talented and committed staff, and I'm grateful to have worked alongside all of you for the last 30 years. I believe that our work over the last 6 years has provided an outstanding foundation for the future leaders in this district, and I anticipate much success for our kids and staff members, and I look forward to hearing of their accomplishments. I want to thank the board members over the last 6 years who had faith in our vision of pursuing excellence for all of our students. While each of them held strong individual beliefs, their collective bipartisan get-it-done attitude helps propel our success for all of New Britain students and will continue for years to come. My hope is that the current Board of Education members will continue to do what is best for students and be reminded to leave politics at the door. We are about educating students. Thank you.
I'm speechless. Can I just say thank you for now for the last 6 years that we worked together?
I'll take that, Gail.
Yeah, I'll save everything for like retirement party, because
We've had some good fights.
I was just gonna say, we've had some good ones, that is for sure.
I have had a lot of them, right? And I would like to say, you know, when I was hired, I am hired to ensure I do what is right with every dollar aimed at children. And I will go to battle with people to try to make it different.
I've been on the other side of that many times. Hold on. Okay. Anybody, no? Questions, comments, concerns? No. Point of order, I think at the end, I'll add something, like we will have to do a superintendent search. We'll have to start that tomorrow,
If you
right?
want to make any other comments, or are you set?
Good to go.
Yeah, I just want to speak real quickly, Gail, if I can, to that
Absolutely.
because the timing of my retirement being 2 months after Nancy's is by design, and obviously I don't think it's any secret to anybody that Nancy and I have been having conversations really over the last couple of years about what a transition might look like. So I do want to again express my commitment. I feel strongly, and although it's not my place to say, the next superintendent should choose their assistant superintendent. So that's one of the reasons why I strongly encourage the board to move forward in as timely a manner as possible. And hopefully by August 30th, both the new superintendent and that person's choice from assistant superintendent can be in place.
Absolutely. And I'll probably have to work with Merrill and just to figure out how we get it going.
Well, Tony, TK and I both are probably the only board members who have ever been on a superintendent search committee before.
No. I've been on 2.
When Cooper left, right?
Yeah, before Cooper and Kirk. So we will definitely have that conversation. Maybe at the end we'll add an item to the agenda. We'll have to do that. Okay, so, wow, I guess we have to get going. All right, that was a great superintendent report. Did you want to add anything else? No, okay.
I just had regular questions. I lost them now.
Okay. So, item B, committee reports. Finance and facilities, you will see a lot on consent. Feel free to pull anything off. There's a few that we did not discuss during committee. And point of order to Mr. Kane and Mr. Gay, is now a good time. I would like to hand the reins over to Mr. Kane, Mr. Anthony Kane, as chair of finance and facilities. I'm not sure when's the right way to do that, but you are willing to take leadership. I'd like to give you that leadership. So you will see that. Curriculum.
Yep, report. The majority of our last meeting was spent on something you'll see tonight on item B on the new agenda or new business, which is the K-5 reading and 6-8 math renewed curriculum. So there's a brief, I'm not sure if it's a presentation or information about what's going on with that. That was very informative, very well done. So you'll see that tonight.
Thank you. Policy.
We had a conversation about masks and whether or not we wanted to modify our policy. I think what we talked about was we did not have a formal proposal on that. As Omicron did, well, let's hope by February at our next meeting that Omicron has burned itself out. But we've got, I think I totaled up 369 students and staff who are currently positive, and community positivity rate of 28% right now in a community where less than 60% of people are vaccinated, and there's only one ICU bed in the hospital available. We will think about how we do these meetings safely. We've got several board members who are participating remotely, and we will keep on this.
Yeah, I think, that's why we did this one, we did the hybrid model. So I appreciate that. Health and wellness.
We haven't met since the last
Haven't
meeting.
met yet. Anybody have board reports?
I do want to thank Ms. Sarah very quick. Last week I received a complaint from a parent about heat conditions at Pope John Paul / Chamberlain. I think I sent her the request on a Wednesday, and I had an answer by Saturday morning that the problems were corrected, so I want to thank you for that quick response.
Thank you.
That same parent, though, did respond back that he has been hearing reports of mold conditions at that same school. And that was one of the reasons why one of the teachers is keeping the window open. So that could be looked into as well.
We do have reports on, we have been doing mold checks often. Alex, that's something that you can pull up. To date, there has been no mold detected. And I do believe, and we can check with Mr. Zalabar, Mr. Kane, he was communicating with families that we haven't got reports to the staff as well.
Okay.
So there had been a problem with mold before putting in industrial-sized dehumidifiers.
Yeah, I know that building, from previous times inside that building before, was Holy Cross and stuff. heat was an issue and mold was an issue moving forward, so I wasn't surprised.
Anybody else board reports? I haven't been to a basketball game because you just can't go.
I just want to give a shout out to the Fine Arts program. They did a spectacular winter concert before the holidays. My daughter performed with a couple of the groups, and they sounded fantastic. And Sleigh Ride was definitely the hit of the night. So congratulations to all the teachers up there and the students.
It's my favorite.
My school split the double game on Saturday with the Bryn High.
I didn't go. 2 people.
We weren't allowed to go.
I know, that's what I mean. I'm not allowed.
Can we do just like a general community shout out? I know it sounds crazy, but I just wanted to thank Amados for their support. For
Oh, I know, Amados. They've always been a long-time supporter, so go ahead.
Well, no. So Amados, actually, Sherry Pike Amato stepped up to the plate when I was giving her my concerns about my nephew's STEAM classroom, and that I wanted to bring in some, just some, I don't know, fidget spinners and some other fun stuff. She had some wonderful ideas, and she actually donated to 3 Pathways rooms here in our district. And this was long before any announcement, long before anything. Our discussions were at the beginning of December. So we had no way of knowing at that point, and they hadn't even signed anything. So totally blindsided by the news that they're closing, but just really a testament to a collaboration between really just between Sherry, myself, and oddly enough, I'd even spoken with Mayor Stewart about it. So it was really just a testament to going, hey, listen, why don't we just go local? And went in there, and she said absolutely yes. And that was just a wonderful, wonderful idea and collaboration. So I can't just say thank you enough. So, good to see that she's still very active in New Britain. And so even though the storefront's not going to be there, we can still count on her support. So she just,
I'd like to make a motion that Gail's do a formal letter of congratulations on the retirement appreciation. And if possible, if we ever had COVID again, it'd be great if they were here to present it to them, but at least some kind of appreciation letter from the board that we also they've
Can
done.
we recognize them at our next meeting in February before they close? Like, I don't know,
That would be
something.
nice. Something
I'll
to
buy her
think
some
about for
flowers.
sure.
I don't know what to allow it, but
Yeah.
Well, they're open every day. It's not
I
like
know.
they'll come across the street for that. Why not? You know what I mean? Like a little plaque thanking them or something. I don't know. But they just, that's just been forever and ever. And I never thought that she would jump to, and I think I was more afraid of asking than she was of answering, because she just, without even hesitation, said absolutely. How many classrooms? And I went 3. Wow. So, yeah.
All right, are we ready for the nitty gritty?
You know.
Presentation. Somebody want to make a motion?
Motion for presentation? What are we Oh, for the board presentation.
Yeah, actually, we don't need to make a motion.
It's on the agenda.
Sorry.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mr.
I'm gonna take my mask off, I know it's. So, good evening. I'm sure you had a lot to do over the holidays, reading the budget book.
Plenty of coffee.
She had a lot of coffee.
You had a lot of coffee? Okay, so did I. One thing too, Kristen, you put this presentation on, is just leave the cover page out. Yeah, since I've been here, there's always been a rumor out there that Board of Education budget is not a line item budget, that's inaccurate. My background is, just so you know, my background is 20 years as a municipal finance director in Connecticut, so 20 years doing that, 11 years as a business manager, 10 years in private, 2 years in public, MBA, CPA, accounting degree. So, I'm kind of adverse in this. I know what it should be with a budget book. I do agree that a board can make changes, and I'm all for that, because that gives the majority consensus and so forth, things can change. A good budget book has a summary up front, so when you look at a budget book, the background should be the detail, and it should flow upward. For instance, our budget book has a summary. The section 1 is a summary total, so if you look at your budget book, it's 125.7. Then you'll see other sections. We do FTEs by object code. An object code is really a line item. So some people look at an object code and go, well, what is it? Object code is a line item. I just want to bring that up. A lot of communities, when they do the object code, they condense it as one. So a lot of times you might see in certain municipalities or school districts, they may see full-time. When I came here 9+ years ago and we brought a system in, I actually want to give the board and everybody more detail. So our object code, when it comes to positions, for the most part, each position has its own object code. So when you look at that, you look at kindergarten teachers. Our kindergarten teachers would be an object code 5104, I think it is, and that's for kindergarten, first grade. So I basically want to bring as much detail to the reader as possible. So many times you'll see in different communities, you'll see full-time salaries or even part-time salaries, and it's condensed as one. I'd rather have the reader see the whole thing. The other thing too is we have section 5, which is summary by object code. One of the things that recently brought to my attention, board members want to have actuals. One of the things with actuals, so what I did in the handout that you all received today, I did the actual just by line item. And it really ties back to the monthly financial reports. So when we look at the monthly financial reports, we have the object code, and we also show the last 3 years actuals. So what you're seeing there in these 12 pages here, you're actually seeing 2 columns are added. One column was last year's 2021 numbers, and the other column was 5 months, 11/30. Now, when you look at the 5 months, 11/30, sometimes people look at that and go, geez, the Board of Education really hasn't spent a lot of money. The budget is $125.7. When you look at it, you're seeing $36 million. Well, many of our salaries are paid over the summer too, so we encumber those funds. I'm actually just showing you the actual dollars expended. When I'm doing the encumbered funds, of course, that $36 million is much higher. It could be $100 million. We're very committed $100 million to transportation and other things. And then if you look at section 6 through 36, that's really going back to the schools and departments. So we're summarizing those, and those get brought forward in section 5. The budget request in front of you, Kristen, you can turn to the first page. The second page. The budget request in front of the board tonight is $125.7. One of the things when I first got here, 7, 8 years ago, with the new system and so forth, we actually changed the way we did budgets. And back then, we used to list all the positions, but I know there's a suggestion out there about listing all positions. And if that's the case, if the board wants to do it, that can be done at a later date, because this is a lot. I mean, when you look at the city's budget, there's 600 FTEs. If you look at the Board of Education budget, there's 1,806 FTEs. That's a lot of data. Now, I have a budget book back here what the board used to do before I came on board, because they used to just consolidate things into like certain line items for positions. And they would show all the positions. They showed them above the line, and they showed them below the line. When we look at the above the line positions, they would actually total those, they would total that back into the budget, the 125.7, the 120, whatever the appropriation was that year. The stuff below the line, they just had them listed there. They never totaled anything. What we tried doing, well, at least I tried doing, is basically now encompass all the grants. So when you're looking at this budget book tonight, and it's showing 125.7, which is what you're really being forwarded to the city, the total budget book was $201 million. So I look at that and I go, geez, I actually play games. I don't know what I mean games. I have to basically look at the grants that we have and say, do I think these grants are coming in next year? And if they are, we keep them. But at times I have to move positions from local to grants, and you'll see that in the budget book where I have to make changes and make it work. We do know that over the last year or so, we've seen some ESSER funds and significant dollars, and eventually those dollars will more than likely go away. And there will have to be decisions on the board and the administration and how to attack that. And people are correct. That's something that's a challenge that needs to be looked at. Those funds eventually will go away. So the 125.7, one thing when I sent you the initial email, I just tried to give you the process. In many municipalities, the process is different than the city of New Britain. One's not better than the other. Many times a budget gets forward on Board of Education, they do January, February, March, a lot of times it goes to the Budget Making Authority, which is the Board of Finance. And it goes forward, and then eventually it may go after the Board of Finance, whatever it takes changes to it. The city's different, it goes to the Board of Finance, and then it goes to the mayor, and it's done by the Common Council. many budgets go in front of vote. You know, so if you live in different communities out there, it could be Newington, Berlin, Simsbury, whatever, I've worked in 3 other communities, those budgets go forward. And usually they go forward in a vote that the city/town budget is a vote, Board of Education is a vote, debt service may be a vote, and maybe all others. Here, it's determined by the mayor sends her recommendations forward, but the town council has it's a line item budget. You know, for them, it's a line item budget. The town council can make any changes. Or the city council makes changes, they actually make the changes on that line item. Now, as a Board of Education, when your budget goes forward to the city, yeah, it is a single line item on the city's books. But for you guys, you have a line item within your books. So our accounting system is a line item budget. And what you're seeing tonight is a line item budget. What the city sees, they might see the budget book, they see one line item. Because it really falls under the authority of the Board of Education when changes are made. Next slide. Now, one of the things I really wanted to show is, you know, things change within the operating budget, within the grants and so forth. If you look at 2016-17, this is really a snapshot, 2016-17. And back then, you know, the Board of Education budget is 125.7. But if you look at personnel costs, our personnel costs for Board of Education breakdown was $86 million, of which approximately 74% all payroll. So you look right across on personnel, you're seeing a local general fund, you're seeing grants, and you're seeing combined. Back in 2016-17, when we were doing the budget work, $116 million was broken down between local and grants, of which 74% was being paid out of local, the other 26% was grants. Back then, the FTEs on the local side were 986, or 75%, of which 613 were certified. Now, if you go back to next year's budget, 2022-2023, which is the next slide, if you actually have a hard copy, you might want to look at them together, you'll see 6 years later, the personnel cost on the local side is $92 million, and you're seeing it's making up 57% of the cost, the total cost. So it's a fact that we have a lot more positions than we had 6 years ago. But it's showing that the reliance on the school district currently for next year is 62.5% is local, 37.5% is grant. So it's giving you really a flavor of what's happening. There's a heavy reliance on grants, and of course that's going to back off to an extent, but there's a heavy reliance on the Alliance funds, which is the grant that keeps growing. Now, if I look at 2022-2023, just on the local side, I'm seeing 1,022 positions right now that's in your budget versus 986. And we're seeing an increase of 36. But what's more important is I'm seeing a decrease in certified positions. We have more certified positions, and that's really because the Alliance grant is usually picking up those positions that have to be moved. And so really the Alliance, you know, if you look at a lot of municipalities, the Britain School Districts gets Alliance grants separately. And what happens with the state of Connecticut, all the Alliance districts, I think there's 30 of them now, it used to be like a half dozen or 10 initially, they get the money, that money goes outright to the Board of Education as a grant. Other communities, ECS, when they increase the ECS, it flows to the city, which it flows in our case, but that money that flows to the city may increase slightly. We're seeing with the Alliance grant, the state made a correction in ECS funding, I think about 4.5 years ago. And basically, it's more of a phasing. The first year they said, we're going to give you 5% more, and then we're going to phase it over 10 years. So since 2019-20, our numbers have increased $3.9 million. Eventually, that's going to come from. So we're in year, I think next year is year 5 of that 10-year ratchet up. Here's the next slide. Now, one of the things you're going to see tonight, we're going to talk about, one thing I want to let the board members know, you have any questions tonight or anything, I'm more than willing to meet with anybody to go through the budget, talk about grants. tell them what I know and what I don't know. I'm not gonna, you know, if I don't have an answer for you, I'm not gonna make up an answer. I do that for my wife sometimes, but I'm not gonna do it for you guys, so I'm gonna be honest with you. So we have the ESSER grant. The first ESSER grant was ESSER 1. That was $5.2 million. That's gonna expire September 2022. The board actually expended about, I think, half of that in year 1. And year 2 is now. I know last year the board basically sent that funding over to the city of New Britain to finish up whatever technologies need for you know, infrastructure or communication and all that. I don't know where that stands. I haven't really seen much out there. I do know there's been a change on the city where the IT director retired recently, and I think he might have moved on somewhere else. So I'm not really sure where that stands. But in tonight's budget, we're really going to be looking at the ESSER 2 and SRR. And in reality, you're seeing our budgets as ESSER 2/ARP because they're a continuation grant. At least right now, the Board of Education is looking at it as a continuation grant. And that could always change. ESSER 2, SRR is the same as ESSER 2, other than now if you have any funds left over, you can use it for capital improvement. You know, where you know, improve your schools, the AC, the other things. So tonight, I'm showing that as ESSER 2/ARP. And the reason why is the ESSER 2 is approximately $23 million. When we gave you the budget document going into this year, we estimate, and when you look at grants, so it's an estimate, it's not really a budget, we're estimating that we're going to spend, we have grants out there, we're going to spend about $14.3 million. And this year, we may spend 14.3. I think we're going to spend a little less, and of course that money gets carried over. So next year is I think it's $23 million showing up in ESSER 2 and SRR. Once we spend that full $23 million, let's say next year $10 million gets spent out of ESSER 2, then the continuation is going to be spent out of SRR. It's almost like the same grant. They have the same definition, and that's why you're seeing it combined, because once one's spent, it moves over. And those are things that have to be discussed because SRR has an extra year. So you're seeing ESSER 2 expires September 2023, and SRR expires 2024. Now the big question is, if you don't spend it, you don't spend it. I mean, I think sometimes people are concerned, it is money to spend, you should spend it wisely, you should spend it smart. But at the end of the day, I don't think Uncle Sam's gonna, we should try to spend it, but I don't think Uncle Sam's gonna be upset if we don't spend it all.
Yeah.
Next slide. Next slide is really just a comparison. It's just showing you general fund budget with the changes. Like I said earlier, our general fund budget is $125.7, same as last year. You're going to see change in line items, these are categories. So when I talk about line item budget, we look at salaries, and salaries are line items. This is a category. So the category captures all those line items as one. So I look at a kindergarten teacher, or I look at a first grade teacher, or I look at my position, or any position out there. They each have their own object code, and they're captured as one, as salaries. So these are the categories. And we're seeing in the budget this, it's $2.3 million more in salaries, and we're also having a reduction in fringes and insurances. When I look at the decreases in the general fund budget, they decrease below the line. I look at personnel and non-personnel, that's a personnel cost. So we look at health insurance and Medicare, it could be retirement and all that. That's the fringes and insurance, we call it. And then we have the salaries. The below the line is the other stuff. And those are things we look at, like transportation. It could be outside tuition, supplies, whatever falls below the line. It has nothing to do with people themselves. It has to do something else. It could be a service. When we look at below the line, the changes you're going to see tonight, and you're going to see some of these changes are going to be captured in the budget presentation when I show the budget analysis. I show the budget analysis combined. Because really, if you think about it, the $10.7 million change all falls in grants, but it's a swap out between grants and local. So when I look at the decreases on the general fund budget, or local budget we call it, bus monitors, that decreased by $107,000. Outside subservices, $621. Rentals increased by $152, and you'll see that in the breakdown. Transportation increased by $384. Outside the tuition decreased by $752. So I'm seeing instructional supplies and $10K. I've seen heat and gas and negative $247, electricity $122. A lot of times I look at 5-year averages. So when we look at the numbers, you're going to see that as part of the rationalization. When we get to the analysis part, you're going to see how did he come up with those numbers. And a lot of times I look at numbers and I try to track down as to what's happening. And sometimes, you know, I have to be conservative. And this year I basically looked at it and said, I need to sharpen the pencil and see what I can do to make this work. The other thing too, I think everybody has to remember too, even though our process is tonight, that's the 125.7, you as a board, when we get back, you know, tonight, if you push it forward, it doesn't mean that's the final budget. I don't want anybody sitting there and going, geez, I approve that, that's the budget that, you know, we're gonna, you know, submit. Really, the main budget is in June. So unless the city of Britain decides, it's a city that comes, sits there and says, you know, we think we need to spend more for education, and we're gonna appropriate 127.7, $2 million more, or whatever, you know, then we have $2 million. The other thing too is when people look at our budget, you know, people always talk about minimum budget requirement. And what is minimum budget requirement? It really means that for the Reliance districts, we're protected. You can't decrease the minimum budget requirement. It's 125.7. Other districts can decrease it based on some rationalization. Rationalization may have to be that your enrollment has decreased by a certain percentage, and by that percentage you can actually reduce your budget by some amount too. In Britain you can't do that because right now, you know, the Reliance districts are protected. So our budget needs to at least minimum be 125.7. Next slide, Kristen. The budget book in front of you tonight has an increase of $10.7 million. Once again, the increase for general fund, local budget is zero. The other differential comes off within the grant funds. You're seeing Title I, I'm showing a reduction of about $2 million. Why is the reduction? We had a 1-year wait with Title I. Everything happened with COVID. When you look at the entitlement grants, like Title I, IDA, those are entitlement grants. You always get them, okay? But there's rules on how you have to expend those grants too. And people always say, oh, it's a 2-year grant. It's really not a 2-year grant. It's really a 1-year plus grant. Entitlement grants must be expended at minimum 85%. So since I've come here, I try to make sure that I try to maintain that 85% if I can. If I can't, I'll expend 90% or 95%. And that way you can carry over the 15%, and the following year you get the same amount, you spend 85% plus the 15%, and you're still spending the same dollar amount. And it's really, you never know. With entitlement grants, they go up and they go down. I mean, when I first got here in Britain, I seen Title I go from $5.3 million 1 year, and I think the following year was like 5.7, and the following year went to 5.4. Well, unfortunately, you know, when that happens, then I look around, oh my gosh, I gave the board a budget, they approved the budget, and now I have to, you know, bless myself a few hundred times to make sure I can find $300,000-$400,000. And, you know, for the most part, we find them in the past because, you know, recently we're seeing more surplus. A lot of times you create surplus in a budget. When you look at a budget, we create surplus. You know, you see it for a city or an education system where you actually budget, you know, $50,000 for a position, and for some reason, let's say that person leaves, and then, you know, and you create $10,000 surplus. So usually you'll see some type of surplus. What I've seen over the last year or so, and I think it has a lot to do with COVID, we have more positions open than we should, and that creates surplus, which means you know, either you're spending or you don't spend. But when we look at the Title I, that's a $2 million. So when I look at Title I have to make up that $2 million. ESSER 2 and ARP, the budget in front of you tonight is, or the estimated funding in front of you tonight is $23.2 million. It was, I think, 14.3 before. That's 8.9. Alliance, the increase is $3.9 million. That's you know, that's the increase. It's going to be pretty darn close to that, within a few $1,000s. Commission and network, with those 3 grants, I think they all through them are close to $1 million apiece. They get reduced by 25% every year at least. So that's what you see the reduction is. It's usually a 3-year grant, commission network, There's been exceptions, like at Newburgh High School, they gave you a 4th year, but of course, every year is a reduction. So I don't want you thinking that, you get $1 million and year 2, you're gonna get $1 million. No, year 2, you're probably getting $750, and year 3 is gonna go half of that, you're gonna get $500,000. So that's why you're seeing the reduction in commission network. Food service, people look at food service, our food service fund's doing well. One of the things we did this year, we started looking at food service, and we know what's happening in the school. And I recommend it. Of course, I was going to push into it too. I made a recommendation to basically, hire additional lunch aides. And instead of going to, we actually changed the way, instead of, paying up for 19 hours a week, we increased it to 25 hours a week. We changed the way we do payroll with that. So we have people working more hours, and we have more lunch aides out there, and the food service fund can't afford it. So that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing $500,000 on food service. Not a big deal. It's not being paid by taxpayers, it's being paid by the money that we raise from the food service fund, which is right now it's profitable, and it's a good thing to do. Other funds, I always catch the other funds is anything that's left over. I kind of do the math, and of course this year it came out to $790. That's a little low. Usually it's in the $50,000, $70,000, $20,000 range, but that's just when I collapse them all together. It's that. Next slide. Now, one thing too, I just want to tell you, when I talked a little about the Alliance funding, I want to go back just talk a little about the Alliance grant. 2015, 2016, the Alliance grant flows directly. So Alliance grant is ECS, Equalized Cost Share. So between 2015, 16, 17, 18, the state had some financial problems. I don't know if you all remember that. Who was it? Was it Governor Malloy back then? I can't remember. But there were some funding problems in the state, so they were actually cutting ECS funding to districts by $250,000, $500,000, just to balance the books. So when they cut the ECS funding, it actually went into the Board of Education ECS grant. So for those 3 years, we started a high of 12.7. The following year, we got 12.5, and the following year, we got 12.3. So we saw a few years of decreased funding from Alliance or ECS. In 2018-19 is when they actually changed the legislation to correct the funding for the poorer communities. So the poorer communities are going to get more funding, and my understanding, the richer community might get a little less funding. There'd be more funding overall, but if any change from them would flow to people like ourselves. So in 2018-19, we increased by $1.6 million. And that was really a phase-in. It would be half the amount. Since that year, in 1920, it went to 17.9. I round these, so it's probably 3.9. 2021, 21.8. 21-22, 25.8. And 22-23, which we're looking at for next year, approximately 29.7. So we're seeing an increase. That's going to, another 5 more years, that number will probably, unless they do something differently, it may just flatten itself out. Now, we look at slide 8 with the grants. You're going to see the estimated grant. The majority of that goes to payroll and personnel. So we're seeing the grants increase by $10.7 million. $10.6 million of that increase has to do with salaries of 7.1 and fringes of 3.4. And when you add them up, it rounds up to $10.6 million. The other $100,000 I would call it below the line. Next slide, Kristen. Slide 9 is really just combining both the local fund or the general fund, as people call it, or the estimated grant funds. You're seeing the same $10.7 million increase. And, the analysis on slide 9 will follow on slide 17 to 25, which we'll get to later. Net position changes. Next slide. We're seeing net position changes from the, I want to make it clear, the adopted budget of last year. So positions have been added throughout this year, especially in the SO2 ARP funding, they've been added. But I'm looking at the adopted budget last year to the proposed budget, including grants for 22-23. We're seeing a net change of 149. We're seeing a net change of local of 10. You're seeing Title I, a reduction for teachers or 23 positions in all. And we're seeing, if you look way at the end, you're seeing other. These are other grants out there that are going away. We're seeing a net change in just teaching positions by 4. So when I talk about the Alliance getting $3.9 million, the Alliance in this case is really picking up those negative net changes. From the Title I, we're seeing 24 positions in Title I. We're seeing other grants of -4. We're seeing a reduction of 28 teaching positions, and we're seeing Alliance getting 31. So if you really want to do the math, it's about +3 in Alliance. It's making up the difference that we're losing from other grants. Next slide, Kristen. This next slide really just gives you just a cost across the board between the total, the general fund, Title I, SC2/ARP, Alliance, and other grants. You're seeing in the general fund, we're seeing a net change of $1.6 million on personnel costs, which is payroll less net of fringes and insurances, and we're seeing non-personnel costs increasing by 1.7. So that's why it comes out to 0. You know, we have to make the budgets balanced, so we can't have it any higher than that. Title I, like I mentioned to you, we lost 23 positions. We had to move 23 positions someplace, and for the most part, that makes up for $2 million. It went from one area to another. That's the 2ARP. We increased by an additional 135 positions, and $8.6 million of that increase has to do with, you know, payroll and fringes and insurances, and the other $300,000 is other changes that we made. Alliance usually picks up most of the personnel, so we're seeing an increase of 29 positions of $3.5 million. We're also seeing non-personnel costs of $360. And people say, what's that non-personnel cost? For the most part, that non-personnel cost has to do with the 3rd year of the Ed Advance contract. So the Ed Advance contract is really being paid out of the Commission Network grant. It's a $1.7 million contract. And every time you reduce one area of that grant, they want you to reduce the other allotment by the same percentage or dollar amount. So the Ed Advance payment has been reduced from the Commission Network grant, and the Alliance grant is picking that with the differential up, which is in total somewhere about $900,000 in change. Now, the Ed Advance contract next year is the last year of the 3-year contract. So, you know, going into the following year, 23-24, that's gone. When you look at the other grants over here too, you're seeing a reduction of reduction of $57,000. That increase in personnel costs, that's the majority has to do with the elections. The next slide is slide 12. And this is just a summary, just trying to show you what the changes were. I'm showing you combined, I'm showing you the general fund, I'm showing you the grant fund. If you look at the combined funds, for 21-22, we had 1,657 positions, and now we have 1,806, so we're seeing an increase of 149. If you go across, you're going to see a +10 in general, and you're going to see a +139 in grant funds. And then it's also done by, you know, the areas and so forth. So sometimes, you know, you see, you know, we'll all go through the positions and you'll see those shortly. The next 3 slides actually have to do with recap the SR2/ARP positions. So if you look at 21-22, you're going to have 3 pages in a row. And Kristen, you know, we can stop and talk or whatever, but if you go through the 3 slides, you can see at the bottom of slide 15, in 21-22 is 161.10 position. In 22-23, some of those positions were added this year, during the year, and some will be added for 22-23, so there's an additional 135. So really, we're seeing in the SR2/ARP grant, 296 positions. That's what you're seeing, and that's part of it tonight.
Excuse me, Mr. Kane?
Yes.
Was this the same information that was in the budget packet you distributed to us last month? Or is it updated?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Was this information that you're giving us tonight, was that all included in the budget packet you gave us last month, or is it different than?
No, it pretty much, most of it is covered in my cover letter. So if you look at my cover letter in the budget book, you're going to see, for the most part, you're going to see that, I believe, a lot of the stuff already in that. cover letter. So I really, I gave you, so a lot of times the presentation is, it's a cover letter. Now, is that in there?
The cover letter.
Well, because I have a lot of questions tonight,
Yeah.
and we have a cutoff of 10 o'clock, that's why.
We don't have a cutoff at 10 o'clock,
Yeah, so
we have to vote to go past 10 o'clock.
Mr. King, if you look at the cover letter,
Yeah.
and I can show it to you right now.
I read it, I read it cover to cover.
Yeah, okay, so you just look at the cover letter, you're gonna actually
Yeah.
see, I just copy and pasted over. So you
Yeah.
see those three, there's no, for the most part, there's no changes, other than if I find a typo.
So hope your questions hopefully will be answered within his presentation.
Now, if I go to the next slide will actually just show the net staffing changes excluding SAT. So, the major changes were done on the grant funds. The next slide will show that there's a change of 14 increase in staffing. Many of those could be local, but they could be other grants too. You're going to see a grade 4 teacher, art teacher, media teacher. You're going to see reduction of administrative aid, which was really a substitute. The administrative aid got reduced. A secretary was created in people services. One secretary, one LPN, world language. So I broke it down by the categories too. So I recapped it down at the bottom. The 14 changes, six for teachers, 3 repair, BSAs with PAs, 3 others, clerical as well, health and medical as well. Okay, and the next slide. Now, one of the things what I try to do for everybody is really do the budget analysis. Because people always say, what is the general wage increase? What is it? And when you look at a general wage increase, I think people have to remember too, it's not always what the contract is. So when you look at a contract and you look at, you might look at a teacher's contract or, for instance, we just settled with the 1186 contract over a couple of years. So you're not always seeing, you might say the contract says you have a 2% general wage increase. I'm just making this up. And maybe there's a step increase. And everybody always takes it and says, well, what's the cost? And when you do union negotiation, you come up with the costs. And you as a board will get a proposal that says, the cost of this contract over 3 years is 10%. And everybody sits there and they go, gee, that means everything must come out to, 1/3 at 10%. That's not always the case because, during the year, we lose a teacher, we hire a teacher. The same thing. Many times you might hire people at a lower rate, or sometimes you hire people at a higher rate. So it's not always a correct ramification. But here we know that our contractual increases, just on the changes in salary, just on certified staff is 2.88%. We also know we added 14 new positions. We know the average position we've added is somewhere about the $68,000 range. So that's with a 952. We also know administrative contract, we just had those changes too. And we haven't added administrators, so that's 250. And also extra earnings and stipends between grants that have actually increased. That's what the certified salaries are. When we look at the non-certified salaries, which is the following 2 slides, I actually back into this for everybody to the penny. We know that our non-certified salary increases were just under $5.9 million. We know we added 64 teaching assistants. Teaching assistants are usually somewhere in the $39,000 to $40,000 range, so there's a number out there, and that comes up to 2.5. We also know through the non-certified salaries, the catch-all for the contractual increases for non-certified salaries, and which is not is somewhere like 3.05%. We've added 23 BSAs at a cost of $741, 23 paras. Many of them are in grants, they're not law. That's a cost of $578. Increase in lunch aids, which I talked about earlier, was $491. 4 BCBAs, that's $359. That's a cost of just under $90,000 per BCBA. 4 deans were added with this board and maybe prior to this board, but during this year, 4 deans were added, and that's a cost for those 4 deans, 204. I think 2 in Grant High School bridges. I think 1 was in Grant High School and 1 was something else I can't remember right now.
Slade bridges.
Slade bridges.
Slade bridges? Okay.
Yep.
And that's a 204. 4 security people were hired. 3 through ESSER, 1 local, 174. 3 tech assistants, which is MIS, 140. 3 family school liaisons. 2 communication assistants, which is under the, if you remember, about a couple months ago, there was 3
That was
positions
for Anita, of one Arabic and one Spanish, was it? Yeah.
Those were those.
Yeah, those 2 positions. Mhm.
COVID coordinator Tracer was hired during the year, early in, I think it was roughly in the summertime, for COVID tracing.
Can I ask a question about that, just that specific one? Because I know it was added for this year, and we're going to have it into next year, 22, 23. Assuming if, as guidance changes.
Well, yeah, so when we look at that, so when I look at the budget right now, it's a snapshot in time. So we're looking at what we think we're gonna need, but coming up in June, that can change. I mean,
Okay.
That's the whole thing about it, it can change. So all we're doing right now is looking at a snapshot in time as to what we think we need, but of course that's gonna change, with board, but also, new leadership may have different ideas as to what should be there or should not be there. We also had 2 client coaches, that was $50K total. 1 secretary for pupil services, that's ESSER, 2, and 1 LPN. Now the LPNs always get hired because it's really, it's more of a timing thing. We actually go up in LPNs, and sometimes they're one-on-ones. So if we have a child in the school district that really has real special needs, sometimes it has to be an LPN that's assigned for that child. Same thing, sometimes there's a para that's assigned to the child. Sometimes the same thing with an LPN. So that's why you always see every year when I look at the health and medical budget, sometimes I usually have an increase of 1, I sometimes have a decrease of 1 because, something happens and that LPN goes away. We have a reduction in extra earnings. When people look at extra earnings, I always think extra earnings is overtime. I used to be privately when I was in municipalities, but I didn't know what extra earnings was. I always think it's overtime, but I guess it's extra earnings. It makes sense. You're seeing a reduction in negotiated salaries, and people say, what is that? Well, conservatively in the past, when contracts weren't settled, I would look at it and make a conservative estimate as to what I think is needed to put aside if those contracts get settled during that year. Well, we don't have that problem anymore, so that $707,000 that was budgeted going into this year, there's really no need of it. So that's why you see a reduction there. Health insurance and HSA contributions. One of the things too, what we do on the board side, our controlling account is our general fund / local budget. So with the HSA contribution, we can't really budget that in the grants, so we have to budget that in the local budget. But when we look at that, we make sure we budget the grants for that portion, so they pay their fair share. So when you see here, I'm saying you're doing health insurance line item and HSA contribution line item. Look at the total combined budget, that increased by $1.1 million, $1.2 million. Where did the change come from? Net new positions, 149, is $1.7 million. I go through the whole calculation. I know looking at this year's budget, we had an increase right now. Our insurance consultant is recommending an increase of 3% in premiums. We also had an increase in cost sharing, by many units, by, we up to 1%. So that's where you're seeing a change out there. And also seeing change in employee coverage at minus $791,000. I did the calculation through. One of the things that, I think over time, I've sort of educated myself on health insurance. When I first worked as a finance director years ago, and we added a position, and we always say, oh, you had a position, family coverage, blah, blah, blah. And, you start looking at it, and you get to the end of the year, you go, oh my gosh, I have all this extra money. Because as a premium-based, when you're a premium-based person, you budget for health insurance. So as in Cincinnati, we budget health insurance premium-based. I had 200 employees, let's say, and 60 were a family, 60 were a couple, 80 were single. And when I budget for those people with family, at the end of the year, I said, geez, I don't have any more families than I had before, or people change, and I would always have surplus. So one of the things I do now, and it's recently over the last couple of years, I started trending back on how I budget for those vacant positions and new positions. Because I don't want to get too high. I mean, why do I want to create? So when I look at a vacant position or a new position, I always budget for civil. And the reason why is when I look at it, at the end of the year, Jackie Bonnie, who actually handles payroll and so forth, and also handles all the employee benefits and costs, she actually will send me a report that says, out of the 900 teachers, 70% take coverage. It's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? And then when I look at that 70% that take coverage, then if I actually do a cost analysis across, I go, geez, they're closer. They may be a little higher than single coverage, but they're lower than couple coverage. So I've taken it upon myself now to basically trend that number down. So when I have a vacant position out there, new position, I just budget single. Now, at the end of the day, if we're short, we're short. But a lot of times too, I realize, over the last year or so, we do have vacant positions. So I always feel there's enough surplus that if I have to make up for it, I can get it from someplace else to pay for that.
So, Mr. Kane,
Yes.
would you mind if we, because I know this new board has a lot of questions, so would you mind, I think this is great information for reference.
Yep.
Would you mind if we cut you just a teeny bit short and then get on to, because we have to vote and that's what we're gonna ask a million questions. I know this is like your shining moment. It's like your shining moment of the year.
My shining moment.
I know. No, we love it, but I think there's
any questions.
Yeah. Because this is my favorite time of the year.
Yes, I know.
It really is.
So like Santa Claus.
That looks like my Christmas present every year.
Listen, I was posting about it. I can't be the only one.
Christmas present, Mr.
One question actually, I've been in the back of my mind, not so much related to this year's budget, but next year's budget, when the ESSER 2 funds run out and we face a cliff. Our responsibility for unemployment costs, and based on the numbers of hires we have, where is that money going to come from?
Well, where's it going to come from? Good question. I think, the discussions haven't really happened yet. I know it's early to think, but I think there needs to be a plan as to when you go forward, as to, you can take these positions in ESSER 2 and roll them to ESSER 2R, which is okay. But at the same time, you're correct. Where's those costs going to come from? So I do think there needs to be a plan as to, the only thing with the ESSER 2R funds, they can be used for other things too. Eventually they can be used for capital and, with those improvements. So I'm just going to throw a couple ideas out there. There needs to be like a cutoff, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a cutoff on positions. I mean, a cutoff, it's not that you don't hire a new position, but you make it to the point in time where you have these, let's call it 300 positions in ESSER 2/R. And you look at it and go, okay, through attrition, if people leave, maybe we don't replace them. I know sometimes people will say, if I look at 3 years from now, 4 years from now, and they'll say, well, funds will come. I think I'm not the most optimistic person. I'm very pessimistic. I think people know that. I look at things differently than other people look at it, and I go, yeah, that's a great story. But I'm not really sure it's going to happen. I look at those 300 positions, and my personal opinion, maybe 5 or 10% of those positions are going to be something that you could probably end up keeping. But you're looking at 300 positions, and 5% is 15, 10% is 30, and I think when you look over time through the Reliance grant, you can pick up some of these positions. You're not going to be able to pick up 300 positions, not unless Uncle Sam carries this stuff forward. So there has to be a plan. And not to say next year you can't go forward with, the plan as is, but you have to decide when does it end, or how do we cut it back to where we should be. There needs to be a discussion, decision. I don't have an answer. I just you're correct. You need to phase in some type of rationalization as where you come. Because, at the end of the day, everybody's going to prove why they need a position. I think we all know that. If you think about it, everything that comes out there is needed. And you're right, it really is. But where do you decide what the answer is? Someone's going to have to decide. It's going to fall onto the superintendent, but it's going to fall onto the board because, I won't be here in 3 years, because, and I'm not trying to throw it that way, I just won't be here in 3 years. I'm sorry, guys, I mean, maybe we might be so. But I do know it's something that has to be thought about.
Oh.
What's that?
Oh.
You can do a budget presentation for a retirement speech.
Yeah, I think
Right, so I do
I
agree.
agree, it has to be,
Right, I think we have a lot of planning come 2 years from now, right?
Well, I think-
But that's a good point.
I actually think it's something that needs to start being, and I'm not saying it has to
Yeah,
happen
that's what I
right
mean,
now
is
this
it-
year, but
we
it's
need
something
to
that has to
start-
be discussed next year.
Yeah.
It really.
You want to get to it and
has
be, holy, what do we
Oh,
do?
yeah, like, do we have that money for unemployment?
And maybe,
Right,
I
you don't wanna
say,
use it all.
between 15 and 30 positions, it could be 60 positions, but it's not gonna be 300 positions.
Right.
Yep, okay. Thank you. So, questions come when we vote. This was just a presentation. So, right.
Oh, yeah, no, and what you forward on to the city tonight, and whatever, is just a requested superintendent budget. It can change, because, at the end of the day, when you look at a budget document, the same thing with the mayor's budget. Whoever the mayor is, when they present their budget to common council can change. They may not change the line, they can actually keep the budget the same and say, we don't want the finance director, slash that person right out. We're gonna hire, no, seriously, they have, and you as a board have the same, like it or not, you can do things, whatever, but it has to be consensus.
Right.
My problem isn't the amount we're spending, to be honest, it's what we're spending on. I mean, I have
Right, so,
18 different questions that I'll be asking tonight, or when we're allowed to ask questions.
yeah. So just, again, keep in mind, tonight we are not adopting the budget. We are simply passing it over to the city and the Board of Finance and Taxation. This is not the adoption vote, right? But you definitely can ask those questions.
And if I could just add, the city side actually has a very simple decision to make here, because they have to give us the minimum budget requirement, which is the amount that we're requesting.
Cannot be reduced.
So they can't reduce it. So, come June, we'll look and see how much we got from the state on top of the minimum budget requirement, and that's when we'll make final decisions on how we spend money.
Right. And that's in May, June, we will have, probably in finance, we'll have another meeting just about the budget, so. But anyway, this was just a presentation. We could probably move on to our regularly scheduled agenda. And then when we come to vote, you can ask your questions. Because yours are line item specific, correct? Right. His are line item
Yeah,
specific.
and the thing too is, with all board members, every board member here, I'm always available with you, talk with you, and tell you what I know. But at the end of the day, it's a board budget, it's a consensus board budget, so the board has to, if they change what the superintendent has presented, the board has to change it as a group, not as one.
Right, correct.
You gotta get 6 votes or whatever.
Yes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. These are like my favorite. This is my favorite. All right, so consent agenda, moving on to items on consent agenda. Any items to be pulled off for discussion?
I'd like to discuss items L and M.
And as a Mary?
Yes, and then L and Larry, those two. And actually K, no, not K, just L and M.
L and M?
Yes, the bid waivers for the tire changer and the bench.
Okay. I need a motion to take them off. No,
Remove them.
just remove. So items L and M are removed and the rest are just on consent. May I have a motion for item L? Motion for item L. So a motion. Yeah, motion to approve.
Bid waiver on.
A bid waiver, motion. Motion to approve the bid waiver for tire change in the amount of $9,101.
Second.
Discussion, thank you.
My question is, why are we doing a bid waiver on these? It's saying, instead of sending them out to bid, is there a reason why we're rushing the process? Is that the only supplier, or is there a reason why for a bid waiver instead of actually taking a bid on it?
I saw Mr. Kerrigan earlier. Is there nothing in the?
No, no, thank you.
I am here as well, yes, and Ted will be joining us. In the past, when we signed a vendor that does a few of the machine equipment for the automotive, whether it's the lift and the tire changer, that we also, or other machinery, we went through with the same vendor that can provide the same type of resources and supplies. So it's one and the same.
So we don't know if there's anybody who can do this cheaper or better?
You know, honestly, I don't know that necessarily cheaper is better. One of the, I can't answer that. I have to get back to you on that. I apologize on that.
Okay.
I know when we have a set standard of, we work with our industry, I will say this, we have an advisory board and industry partners that identify and support any decision we make. We don't do it randomly, like, but we take our industry experts that will come in and talk to us about what is needed or what is missing. And over the course of, as we revamp the whole automotive program over the last few years, we were able to find certain vendors that were great and some that were not so great, whether they could get the part or deliver it on time. But I can say our due diligence was done in that respect. But other than that, I will wait for Mr. Kerrigan to join us.
Because whenever I see the words bid waiver, I always question it. That's why I like to know if there's a reason why we're skipping the whole bid process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
when we have similar to our some of our machinery, like if we buy one Bridgeport this year and we spread it out over the course of 3 years, we typically use the same vendor so that we have the matching machinery, same warranty, and the same partner. But Ted is joining us now.
thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense, but when you say bid waiver, you kind of have to explain why.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm saying, the way you explained, that makes sense. When you have like a part and you're spacing out over a couple of years, that makes sense. But when you say bid waiver without explanation why, that to me throws up a red flag. That's why I need to hear the reason why.
Okay.
So do you have further questions for Mr. Kerrigan? He has joined us.
Well, that's it. I'd like to know why we're requesting a bid waiver for those two items. Is there a reason why he doesn't want to go through the bid process? Is it because it's a specialized part? Some reason why?
So moving forward, Ted, I kind of started answering before you joined us, but when we're talking about their machinery and the MET and the Career Tech Ed component, about using when selecting bid waiver, identifying why we're doing a bid waiver, specialty vendor, the one that's provided the materials in the years past, so we're using the same vendor over the course of 3 years, to add that to the Board of Ed memo so it's clearer at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm. I think he's trying to talk, but he's...
Oh, he might be on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, I was on mute?
No,
No, him.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Oh, him, he's on mute.
I'm sitting here going like this.
Yeah.
We gotta learn sign language. Did he put himself back on mute?
Nope, he's there.
Yeah, Mr. Kerrigan, if you could explain why you want to do a bid waiver on those two items.
Well, right now we're only discussing L.
Well, the other side is that these are established vendors that we use when we purchase items through the Perkins, and these people train us on our machines, they service our machines. So it's sort of a relationship that we have with them over the years, as well as what Sandra had said.
Have you ever gone through the bid process for them?
For my experience going through the Perkins grant, when we buy stuff through the Perkins grant, we haven't gone through the bid process when we are purchasing these things through our established vendors.
How did we establish the vendors?
I can't speak to how. I just know that we've already had them. We've just been purchasing from them for years.
and they've been approved.
Okay.
So, to elaborate though, from in the past, we do a bid process or a vendor, or we use our industry partners that have a specific item in the educational field of automotive. So this is a continuation of a partner for the automotive component. And I don't know, in the past, we've had automotive years ago, and it followed more of the project lead the way. And then most recently we brought, and when I say recent, within the last 5 years, bringing back automotive, similar to, and I don't know if you all remember, Doc, establishing the educational component of the automotive sector and not doing a project lead the way in automotive. But we have purchased specialty items. The lifts, the 3 lifts and Ted, you can elaborate a little bit more for explanation. When we purchased the lifts in the automotive room, the newer lifts, the tire changer, or some of the new equipment, we work with, again, industry partners and identify this common vendor so that we have the same contract, same units.
I couldn't have said it any better.
Thank you.
So, could I ask a question? So does that mean what we're trying to do is match an existing device that we've got, so we've got the same, multiples of the same one? Or is this buying a new piece of equipment that we don't have before?
No, well, with the 2 items that we're requesting for, we're trying to match them up to as close as possible to the existing items that we have. And it makes the transition from one to the other a little bit easier for the teacher and the students. So the tire changer and the lathe that we're replacing are 30 years old. They're can't get parts for the replacement for them. It takes time to get them repaired. For specialty parts, it's more expensive. So we're trying to match them up as best we can.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need to replace them. Just I'd rather see the bid process followed, unless there's a specialized reason why, like this was the only vendor that makes this part, or this vendor's already been servicing it for 10 years. Just give an explanation of why. And so in the future, though, I will support it this time, but really I'd like to see the future a bid process or an explanation of why you want to do a bid waiver or a bid process followed.
Sure.
Any other questions on item L?
Can I just say one thing?
Is that Annie? Sorry, because my computer just died, so if you could watch for.
I can't. I mean, I don't know if you've ever gone and bought what you think is the exact same thing someplace else and find out there's always a little difference in what you're getting so that they don't fit perfectly. So that's why people have to get new parts and go new places. So I can understand what you're saying if you've been buying stuff from one company, then when you switch to another one for the next time and then another one for the third time, eventually your stuff isn't going to match up and you're running all over the place when something goes wrong.
But that, you know what, that's a perfect explanation to put in if we're going to do, you know, why we do the bid waiver, and that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
So we can certainly do that.
All right. So all in favor of approving the bid waiver for the tire changer of $9,101? Signify by saying
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, sorry. Any opposed? Perfect. For item M?
It was the same question, so I think the answer.
We have to approve them both.
Yeah.
Okay. A motion to approve item M?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. New business. Operations.
Motion to approve the superintendent's budget request for fiscal year 22-23.
Second.
Discussion?
Anybody ask a question?
Yes.
All right. You ready? First question, page 57. Why do we have 3 principals in Roosevelt School? We have a principal for the Early Learning Center, a principal with 18 teachers, a principal for the Satellite Career Center. But then we have half a principal for House with only 8 teachers. And why can't we combine the principal for Hal's, the principal for the preschool into one position, take the half time that Ms. Clerkin was spending at Hal's and devote her duties to something else. You mentioned nutrition. There are other open positions for administrators that we can move her into to do the other half time. It would save us $80,695 for a person when the preschool principal is supervising the staff. See, roughly a third of the principals in the other schools that pay the same amount of money.
Okay, I can address a little, but I think the superintendent and assistant superintendent will have to address it further. When you look at the Roosevelt campus, there's really 3 different schools. So you have to remember, there are 3 different schools. Hell's is a school that has a half principal. Mrs. Clerkin is also the director of fine arts for the whole district. So she's a district-wide administrator for fine arts for the whole school district. So and half of their job is dedicated to Hell's. So that's number 1. The Satellite Career Academy is a school which was taken from the high school, and it's a school of 175, 200 students, and that's a separate program. So I mean, it really takes an administrator that has a separate expertise than somebody who's an elementary early learning. So if you look at Satellite Career Academy, it's a high school. I mean, so you're taking somebody who's a 9 through 12 individual or a 6 through 12 individual that understands middle school / high school. The Early Learning Center is somebody who's at the not the low level, but somebody that takes the early children out there. That's what you have a person out there in the Early Learning Center who's really a pre-K person, but it's an elementary type of principal. I think Nancy's here and Mike could probably talk a little more on it, but it's really, it's just one campus that services like 3 schools, that's 3 programs. That's all it is.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm gonna add a little bit to that. Terry Turcott, who is the preschool principal, is also district-wide coordinator and of the community as well, working with all of the community providers. So none of our, excuse me 1 second. And so Terry services the 200 plus preschool students, and that requires a skill set, Mr. Kane, that Mrs. Clerkin doesn't really have now. She would have to go back to coursework, etc. She'll really be qualified to take care of a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. In addition, I mean, we would love to be able to have these schools spread out. I think that's got to be a part of your 5-year plan and thinking about how we can expand Satellite Career Academy. Space is our issue. It's been our issue. I'd love for them to be annexed or have their own building, or we could triple the numbers of students that they serve. Right now we serve, and I might add, the data that supports that is our graduation rate that continues to go up year over year. The inception of Satellite Career Academy is another skill set. You're dealing with 175 students who are overage, undercredited, and have a host of personal issues. And so it's more like a one-on-one. That would be the same kind of idea towards Mr. Maloney, who is the principal for Transition Center. Students who struggle, often they require a much smaller ratio, much larger ratio of having an adult on hand. That's the rationale.
Well, I can understand that, but again, when I look at the numbers of teachers who are supervising, you have one principal that's only supervising 8 teachers in the same building as a principal who's supervising 18, and that person's making the same amount, who's supervising 18 is making the same amount of money as the principal who's supervising 40 teachers or 50 teachers.
So rest assured, Mr. Kane, that when we look at teacher evaluation and we continue to look at the average administrators across the state, we are still under the average number of administrators needed. A lot of it goes also to a state-mandated teacher evaluation system. So I can assure you that our administrators, who may have a smaller population of students, have a much greater population of teacher evaluation to accomplish or get done outside of their building.
Yeah, I would like to say one thing. You know, regarding Mrs. Clerk, and I mentioned she's the fine arts and district coordinator. She actually, along with the principals, oversees, I think, 27 music teachers, like 32 art teachers, or vice versa. So she's involved in the hiring of those 60 positions, including her, 10 positions.
Well, that's just it. I mean, I almost feel like we should be increasing her duties as coordinator and lessening her duties at house, and have the other principals assume some of that duties, because I feel that we could probably accomplish a lot more with the duties she is doing right now. And it's nothing reflection on her. I've met her, she's a great administrator, and just I feel that only supposing 8 teachers is that justified.
You give it the next question.
Yeah, I think I missed something. Was it said that people in certain buildings aren't necessarily responsible for only people in that building? They have to go elsewhere and are responsible for teachers in other locations? Is that what was?
Yes.
I don't understand how that's remotely efficient.
She's a district director of fine arts and music. So she actually has oversight over art and music teachers. And when you talk about oversight, she has an oversight in coordination with the building principals at those schools. So Hell's is a small school, 150 students, I believe, somewhere in 150, 160 range. They also have one of the teachers actually, when she's out of the building, serves up as her replacement if needed. So her job is dual. That's why she's 50% Hell's, 50% district-wide. Now, in reality, her job could be 6% district-wide, 40% Hell's, but that's just what it's for inflation purposes.
So going along with Matt's question, same thing you said about the Early Learning Center. She's also supervising the early learning programs throughout the district. So how much dedication is she spending with the principal teachers in the Early Learning Center? She's spread out all over the whole district. So
she also has a teacher who's an assistant to the principal that steps in when needed. I think one thing, so when you look at the Early Learning Center, I know there's been discussion about having a centralized early learning center which encompasses one campus. And you're right, that's the best case scenario. But right now, it's different locations.
I just question the efficiency on it. But moving on to that one, there's the time. Postage. I was kind of surprised to see we're spending between $1,500 to $2,500 per school on postage. I'd like to see that reduced 5% across the board. I feel that in today's day and age of technology, and looking at your budget of actually spent versus budgeted,
yeah, I know.
There's a big decrease.
And that's one thing. Let me. Okay. So I understand where you're coming from. We can make those changes. We allot each school. I wish I brought it with me. That's something we allot schools based on instructional supplies, office supplies, postage by number of students. You'll see that the principals in those schools will actually make minor budget transfers. So we can correct it. They usually will transfer, $500 from postage to instructional supplies. They want more instructional supplies. So in reality, they keep it within the school. And you're correct. Can we change that number? There's not a lot of dollars that are provided to the schools anyway when it comes to instructional supplies, just because we have a limited budget. Can we change the allocation to basically change it? They change it themselves because they do budget transfers that make up the difference. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at a school, when they get a budget of, let's say, $20,000, and at the end of the day, they spend pretty close to $20,000. Of course, some might be more instructional supplies, some might be less in postage. So you're correct. We can chew that number up and get it closer, but it's still the same dollar amount. There's not a lot given to each school anyway.
Well, I'd like to make it a goal, except 5% across the board, and go for at least 1,000. The funny you mentioned about postage, your department.
It's a catch-all.
What?
Well, because my department, so you look at my department, I actually, when Mrs. Salino was here, or Mrs. Jakubowski was here, it was called operations. So, and that budget always took the centralized postage machine upstairs. So what was happening with a lot of times with postage is it goes up, it goes down, and we make up the difference.
Because I looked
So
over.
it's not me, I'm not sending out posters.
Yeah, because I looked over your budget, you requested $60,000. Last year, you requested 100, but only spent 49. So I'd like to reduce that one by $20,000.
I can look at it, but I'll,
Yeah.
But I think one thing I want to really make clear with the board, you do have a 125.7 budget.
Right.
So I want to make sure at the end of the
Well, that's
day.
it. It's just kind of like, the analogy I'm going to give is, you take you got a family to feed, you walk into Walmart with $200, do you go grocery shopping with that $20, or you go buy a big screen TV? You still spent $200, it's what you spent it on. And I figure that 125.7 is a good figure, it's just, are we spending it the best way? That's what question I have.
Absolutely.
Next question I want to bring up is, here, that's the end of the controversial. Legal services.
Yes.
We spent $212,000 for legal services, but we have a corporation counsel next door that could handle, and even discussion with the corporation counsel's office, they could handle a lot of our services that we do, higher cost reduction. Is there a reason why we spent $212,000 on the legal services of our own rather than using the cities?
I think you really have to look at the legal services budget that we have. There's really three components of legal service budget. One is people services, which has to do with the PPTs and the specialized services. So if you look at that budget right there, you're going to look at and say, what is actually being paid? Corporation counsel, they are very good at what they do, but they don't have the expertise. If it comes to those type of services, they would have to go out to an external attorney to do that for them. So that's right there, that doesn't work. The other thing too is we have negotiations, union negotiations. I don't know if corporation counsel handles the negotiations or labor, it's not labor negotiation, labor's done. So you have to have a labor attorney. So right there, that's not corporation counsel.
They do labor negotiations for the city side?
Board of Education is its own separate domain. We can discuss this, we can argue with this, but they're a separate domain. They need to feel comfortable, the superintendent has to feel comfortable, whoever he or she may be with the counsel they're receiving. So the only other thing is just, the contracts and so forth. Then you can use corporation counsel. That's the smallest piece of the pie. I think what you see here in legal contracts, when I first got here years ago, I'm going to give you a good example. A few years ago when I was here, we had a situation where we went up to bid on transportation, and the company that lost basically brought us to court, lost. And we as a Board of Education had to basically fight that lawsuit. We probably spent somewhere about $250,000 to basically fight something. And of course our legal bills that year were, $400,000 or $500,000. We've actually reduced our legal bills. So what you're seeing in this year's budget, the $212,000, I've actually been cutting it down. So you're seeing a reduction. So when you look at that analysis that I provide you in the cover letter or the budget presentation, you're seeing a reduction in legal services. And I actually look at the three pieces, and I look at, okay, what do I feel comfortable with? It used to be 380 when I first got here. It became 300. Now it's at 212. So can you use corporation counsel? We do use them at times, but they don't have the expertise in education.
Next question I got is, there were two positions.
Hold on. Ms. Santana had a question.
I am so sorry. It was the same thing that you were on a roll with, and I was trying to write it down as you were saying it. Forgive me. The first part was pupil services. The second part was labor negotiations. And the third part, please repeat again.
The third part is anything. It could be any contracts or whatever. The third part is, when you look at the budget that's in front of you tonight in legal, there's three pieces. There's one that's on the Board of Education. When I think Board of Education, it's done through, it's your small budget / the superintendent's small budget, 901, 902, that's a legal budget out there. Let me just find it quickly for you.
Well, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
want
it's
to
there, I
take
just
it from
gotta find it in a second.
Just say we could definitely go through the object codes, map it to the check.
Right, but my question wasn't to the dollar amount, it was really to Mr. Kane's point, which actually was, instead of us using, right here where I was pointing.
Yeah, okay, so legal, the Board of Education, the legal budget for next year I'm presenting is $19,000. And that's where, we have like different contracts and so forth that go forefront. It could be a situation with the board, it could be a situation. There might be a situation where, the board and the city aren't in agreement.
So are you gonna send that to the city attorney? That's what you're asking. You're saying that the situation out there that needs legal expertise or legal advice, and it might be something with the city, I'm gonna send it over to corporation counsel. You don't do that.
Well, no. What I'm looking at is to his point, was that we can't tell them what case they're gonna have in front of them, no more than we can tell them whether they can handle it or not, or what they can do. We're looking at how much and what we're gonna be putting that money towards that we can better use in our district. If we already have by charter that we should be using, the city side attorney, we shouldn't be in bed for anybody for over $200,000.
We don't necessarily use it, right? It's there as a budget item in case we do need to use it.
But we've used quite a bit of
Absolutely.
whatever we've budgeted for.
When we think about by charter, we look at, in a city, if you use something in city services, in-kind services, so we have used corporation counsel for certain things. They have been used. Same thing like crossing guards. That's a city thing. It's in-kind services. When you look at in-kind services, people always talk about what's our per pupil expenditure. In-kind services is added back in. So at the end of the fiscal year, when we actually send our reports up to the state of Connecticut, the city finance department provides us, and it could be crossing guards, it could be legal, it could be different type of insurances that they're paying on our behalf. Either they may be paying for it. We actually add that back in our per pupil expenditure.
And I understand that completely, and I understand the expertise that's required for educational, and I understand that. To me, I'm looking at over $200,000, there's a few teachers that we could buy. I'm just saying, to me, that's any savings that we have that we are reallocating to another opportunity for us to do better as a district. That speaks volumes to me that we're trying to save where we can. And to me, if we're going to say that the city doesn't know how to handle labor negotiations, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
So number one.
Right, we're going to stay here just for 1 second, okay? So we asked a question, got the answer. Don't forget, we're not adopting, right? We're going to have workshops and we're going to discuss.
I think you need to educate yourself on the city's budget first.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you look at the city's budget, I have it here. I'm not going to go through it right with you. When you look at the city's budget, corporation counsel, they have a budget.
Yeah.
Okay, and you see corporation counsel, they may have 3 attorneys, they may have a paralegal, they may have a secretary, and that comes out to a cost. They also have the corporation counsel, which is Attorney General Pizarro. He has a cost that's in the city for, I don't know what the dollar amount.
Right.
We also have outside attorneys. So look at the line items and be familiar with the city's budget. You're going to see that budget for the city, which might be $400,000 of personnel costs or whatever it may be, also includes a few $100,000, a couple $100,000 of other attorneys. So the city of Britain will use other attorneys because they look at their expertise. Even though they have good attorneys next door, they don't specialize in anything. They realize there's things that they can't handle, and what do? They have a budget that basically
allows you to farm out that work.
Yeah, and they do it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, no, and I understand that, but if I get that part of it, but I would just like for us to have a more complete budget that we're sending over for adoption than with the allocations made, but I understand that, I'm sorry.
I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, I'm just curious because I'm new to this entire ballgame, but has it ever been done before where the board or the district has used corporation counsel as opposed to?
Yeah, they were just here.
No, I know that, but I mean in the general sense without having our own budget.
We have some.
Oh, no, never, I don't think.
Yeah, they have been used. I don't say they've been used.
No.
Exclusively.
We have always, not exclusively, we have never exclusively.
So we've never exclusively used corporation counsel so we can't say unequivocally what would be better and more efficient.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out there.
But we also know that corporation counsel doesn't have the expertise in a bunch of areas where they would have to farm it out to someone else, and they would then probably bill us for that additional cost. So
that's,
I got you.
So,
again, for instance,
I understand the question, I understand the responses. Like, for tonight, we're not adopting, right? So we are definitely gonna have workshops. Definitely something to consider as a line item. So are you okay with the answer of why? We're not gonna solve tonight what you want, right? You have the answer to the why. You don't necessarily have
Let's look at more questions on more positions. Some I'll save for a workshop, and some I'd like answers on tonight, especially since we got everybody here.
Right, but you have, don't forget, you have the answer Doesn't mean you're gonna like agree with the answer, but you have your answer.
Yes,
For you to do additional, okay.
Another one I got is pupil services specialist. Why do we have a .5 at every school? What duties do they do?
Let's see, yes.
That could be, that's a
I don't know if
group.
Mr. Spalding was on.
Mr. Spalding?
I'm not sure if he's on now.
But we can,
He's here.
He's here.
Mr. Spalding's here.
Mr. Spalding.
there you
I'm not
are.
quite sure what he's referring to.
Well, there's a pupil services specialist at every, it's .5 almost at every school. But there's no explanation of what a pupil services specialist does.
Pupil service specialist is the person who runs the PPT. So in this district, as opposed to many others where teachers run the PPTs, we have a pupil service specialist run the PPT meetings for 2 schools. When I came on board, they had school psychologists doing it. And so I changed it and I put in people with expertise that run the meeting. It allows for more consistency among the paperwork, it's more efficient, and it allows our teachers to do what they do best, and that's teach. So in some of our districts, Hartford for instance, teachers run the PPTs. That takes them away from teaching students. I believe this is a more efficient process, and that's why we use PPT specialists.
Okay, that's what I kind of figured it was, but for the workshop, I'd like to provide data, back up why we need to have one person for 2 schools, why not one person for 3 schools, 4, what is their caseload to justify having it. Because I've heard a position, I mean, I go to meetings in Hartford, and all I hear is, New Britain's got this, New Britain's got that. But I'd like to hear some justification of the numbers of, how many, Joey Listro is a pupil services specialist, he has 45. Tony Kane has 20. Where's the justification of how many serve? What's their caseload? What are the numbers are they doing? So we have a number to back that up.
Sure, I certainly can provide that. What we have normally is we have, right now we have 2 psychologists that will cover a school. They have a similar caseload. It's pretty consistent across the district. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I certainly can provide you that. We have 1 PPT specialist that oversees each of the middle schools, all right? And then we have 2 per elementary school. Those numbers are roughly the same, give or take 25 to 40 students. High school is a little different, but that's why we have 2. You don't need 1 for each building, but you would need more than, one person could not handle 3 schools. And in fact, we had assistants, PPT paras that were assisting them. We did away with those positions. We eliminated 8 of those positions this past year. Because we felt that wasn't necessary. So now the PPT specialists are doing all the paperwork and handling the invites, setting up the meetings that the assistants were helping them with before. So really, it's really more than, I don't believe that 1 person could handle more than 2 schools. I certainly can provide you all the data with respect to the number of, with their caseloads, et cetera.
That's why I'm more concerned about the number of schools they do and how many caseloads they manage.
Yeah, they're pretty consistent. We've matched the schools up, because some of the larger schools, so you'll have a large school, a small school, but they're pretty consistent. And then some of the schools also have programs, but I certainly can provide you that.
Well, you got data for that too. The other data.
And if I can add, so you brought up Hartford, for instance. Our system is very efficient, but the superintendent didn't mention during COVID, for instance, we received 0 citations during the COVID year when COVID came out because of our PPT specialists. They came in the summer, they made sure that all the RIEPs were caught up. The larger district in this county had over 700 citations last year. We had 0.
Well, I agree that I've heard a lot of the position is good. It's just I want to make sure the caseload is balanced out and we're doing most efficiently. But when you're getting the data for that, but also data for the speech pathologist too. I remember years ago we had 1 that was maybe shared by a couple schools. Now it seems like every school had 1 to 2. Do we have data to back up that we have a need for 1 to 2 at each school?
Sure, I can certainly provide you that. I wasn't prepared, to present this evening, but I certainly can provide you that.
I do.
Our numbers are rather high. Our numbers are higher than comparable districts, and, we do a contract out for some of that, so, we do need those additional supports, but again, I can certainly provide you that, within the next week or so.
Yeah, because I remember visiting the physiologist at Jefferson, and then go to a PPT with her at Sacred Heart. She's in it, and then visiting her, walking under the halls at Holmes, because she's there too. Are we doing it at efficiency? And the next one, question I have, and I'll save it as the last one. The rest I'll save for the workshops. Is the switchboard operators. There are two positions of switchboard operators, one at the high school, one in the central office. Is the switchboard operator in today's technology age necessary, or are they doing other duties that maybe we need to reclassify that positions?
I'll speak on that. I mean, right now the switchboard operator here at Gates is a receptionist. You see the person at the front door, so it's really coming and going. Newburgh High School is a very big school, as you probably realize. It's over 2,000 students, several hundred staff employees. That person is also the main contact. A lot of phone calls come in. It's been there for a while. There are two different positions. There's no doubt about it.
These are positions that we're spending roughly about $120,000 on. And I'm just wondering, in the technology, if there's a better way to do it, phone tree, whatever, is we looked at, that's all there's minimum we're doing.
So
maybe you can shadow Ms. Walsh or Ms. Lapila one day, right, to see what they do for their job.
Yeah, there's a lot of phone calls coming to this office, through Gates. I mean, it can be superintendent level, so there's a lot of visitors coming. So the switchboard operator here is supported by many of the clerical staff here. So when she is out for lunch or she's ill or she's on vacation, we have staff here that actually takes over. So there's people in my department, all departments throughout this building that will actually go down with their job and go down and man the switchboard. So we have a lot of people working independent supporting that position. It's really the face of the district.
Well, I look at a lot of businesses, they've eliminated switchboard, even next door, they eliminated their switchboard operator next door. So that's an area of efficiency. Yeah. Can we justify that position?
Well, it's a gatekeeper. I mean, one thing too, you look at it is a gatekeeper. So, when you look into a school building, it's a secured building. I mean, somebody needs to basically man the building. I don't know who would do that. And maybe there's ways of doing that. But it's more than just answering the phone. It's really the main face of the district that sits out there.
I'll reserve the rest of the questions for a budget workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
If there are questions, please, if you have a question ahead of time, please forward them to me because,
especially
that way I can come up with an answer or not come up with an answer because it makes it easier so we can communicate so I can understand your question. If I don't understand your question, I'll say I don't understand your question because I'm here to give you the answer, but just asking questions sometimes it's hard to give an answer.
Through you, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for making time for me because in all the time I had asked, you were the one person that said, yes, I came in here, you sat down with me and you explained and we did it like a little workshop. So I thank you.
And that thing goes, with any board member. I'm being serious. I look at it that I actually work for the board, okay? I work for I grew up in Britain like many of you people. Unfortunately, I just moved out recently. They were hoping to eventually retire and so forth, but I grew up in Britain. And we just sold because it was a good time to sell, so we can afford something. But no matter if I live here or don't, it's the same thing with the finance director in communities. The best thing is, I'm supposed to do my job is if I'm part of this community. And that's why I always take pride in it. And when I was in Clinton one day as the finance director, it was the nicest thing when somebody came in and says, geez, really appreciate it, because I worked on board in town. They said, you treat your job as if you live here. And I said, I'm a taxpayer. It doesn't matter if I'm a taxpayer in Britain, because we were living in Britain back then, or a taxpayer in Simsbury, or whatever. I'm a taxpayer, so you have a right. And I look at the board too, this is your operation. I'm here to support you and help you. And if there's things that I can explain to you, and you may have difference of opinions, that's okay.
That was, what but that's the thing. I was very vocal about my difference in opinion, and you totally embraced it. We're like, that's okay. We don't have to agree, but it's all right. This is the information I can give you. The numbers aren't going to lie. And I went, oh my God, okay.
All right. So we have a motion on the table to approve the superintendent's budget request for fiscal year 2022-2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
3 nays?
Yep.
Item B. Oh, motion carries.
Yes.
Motion to approve, sorry.
Not you.
K-5 curriculum.
K-5 curriculum. Item B.
Motion to approve K-5 curriculum.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, question?
Is there a
Is
question?
that Annie?
No, I think she just said aye.
She just said aye.
Oh.
You're having flashbacks to the summer. Any nays? All right. Item C, personnel.
Motion to approve revised job description for adult education evening
Second.
supervisor.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item D, personnel.
Motion to approve proposed contract agreement for educational services between Kelly Services and Consolidated School District of New Britain for remainder of 21-22 school year.
So I have a second. Any discussion? Oh,
Yes, of course. First question we got is, what is the, I think you call it sub rate, Ms. Sarah, where the position, number of positions they fill for us every day?
Can you say that once more, Mr. Kane? I have Ms. Manning on also, she'll speak to it.
Yeah, I heard the term you called it at one of our last meetings, but the set of positions they fill for us every day, was this called the sub rate?
Yeah,
Yeah, what is this with the rate?
I believe, Mary Ellen, do you want to present?
Sure, I can. There should be a handout, I believe, that Kristen passed out that gives a breakdown of credit services with the contract that you'll approve this evening. So we're aiming to be more competitive in the region and to address this pattern for the insurance exchange and fitting across the nation. So right now we have a daily sub rate, I believe Mr. King was referring to, of $95 a day.
No, I was referring to the percent of positions they fill for us every day.
you want to know tonight which positions they are filling for us as a sub?
What
How many
rate?
subs are filled each day?
Yeah, I think it was like 12%, you said one last time meeting.
I understand, Mr. King, you're referring to the fill rate, like how...
Fill rate, that's what the term was, yes.
Okay. So the fill rate fluctuates on a monthly and sometimes daily basis. It can be as abysmal as 15% and as high as 50 or 60%. We can get a report from Kelly that can give you a monthly and or daily breakdown, because we do provide that to their clients. This year has been an incredible challenge. That's why we're presenting the increase in the rates. And so our hope is that when people have the choice to sub here or elsewhere, that the increase in pay will be an incentivization for them to come here as opposed to a neighboring district, such as the samples that are shown.
This is surprising based on my earlier questions, but I actually think the increase is too low. Up until 2 years ago, I was a sub for Kelly for New Britain. I was making as a certified teacher, I was making $115 a day. And the long term, $135. it doesn't seem like we've gone up that much. I mean, talking $20 really a day. And you have schools in for Hartford, for example, which is almost 150. I look at some of the other towns, and they're not that far off from us. One of the incentives talked with other subs at the time was, why would you work in New Britain? Because you made so much more. And in some cases, you made like $30, $40 more a day. And it's not that far off. I think Weathersfield is like 130. Weathersfield used to be one of the lowest subs rates. So I'm also wondering if it's too low. The other question I have, when is our contract up with Kelly? There are other sub-services, and I'd like to see what their rates would be for us. For example, I think ESS is one, other companies going out to bid for other sub-services.
So I can answer as far as how long we've been in contract with Kelly Services. They've been around for approximately 22 years. I know the partnership with New Britain has been for over 10 plus years. So there is the possibility of certainly of looking at other vendors.
1996.
Pardon me?
That's when we switched over. Right? I don't know, it's 2001 we switched over, I remember. From using internal subs to Kelly subs.
Yes, the partnership has been for quite a long time, yes.
So I'd like to see us look, maybe going out to bid for next time around.
Any other questions?
Are we doing the contract?
Yes, that and this.
Not this one, this is to increase the rate, which I think, I'm almost wondering maybe.
When does their contract actually term?
This year they said.
So
It's an annual contract that's renewed each year.
Yeah, but it's renewed in January or June? At the
June.
end of the school year?
June, so this is an
I can't.
amendment to the contract to try and raise them.
One of the things they're trying to get more subs is they're trying to increase the rate, and I just wonder if the increase is too low.
So are we approving the contract for 2022, 2023, correct? With these new revised?
It's a revised contract.
Revised contract.
More competitive in the region. So it is atypical that we're doing a mid-year revision of the contract, and we're doing that to be more competitive and to increase our sub-pool.
So wouldn't you really want to be looking at, like you said?
All right, any other discussion, questions?
We'll give more fill rate.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, I was just asking about the fill rate. Just
Oh.
I'm sorry. Because that was information that she said she would have to go back and take a look. The low was the 15%, the high as much as 50 or 60%, but the actual, she would have to contact Kelly and find out exactly how much they are actually filling. As a snapshot for the last few months, but potentially with another vendor, that other vendor is able to have a higher fill rate, depending if they're serving another district. Right? I'm understanding this. Yeah, I got you. See,
I'm there.
I'm getting there.
All right, so we are in contract with them now, so this is changing the rates. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, perfect. Motion carries. Item E.
Motion to approve to move Slade and Pulaski roof projects forward for an OSCGR grant application feasibility study.
Second.
Any questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item F.
Motion to consider and approve school construction projects for submission to the City of New Britain.
Second.
Any discuss, oh, do I have a second? Oh, there was a second.
You had a second.
Mr. Maria.
Mr. Maria.
Oh, no, second, real quick. I gotta be quick. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Item G, I believe requires executive session.
Move we go into executive session, discuss item G,
Second.
to include board members and
I would like to include board members, Mr. Kane, Ms. Sarah.
we have to include the personnel director.
Oh, Ms. Manning, I'm sorry, with Ms. Manning as well. So we are back. Item G.
So I'd like to, we did our discussion, I'd like to add another item to the agenda, which is the adoption of the Chief Information Officer's contract extension.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to, can I say a comment? Gail?
Yes.
I just, can't thank Jeff enough. You know, he has taken zeros for years, right? It's been about doing the work, and he literally has built our system from nothing, I mean, to something. And last year was Herculean, but even before that, Jeff is 24 hours a day on. There are times we text at midnight, 1 in the morning, and he's back at it early the next morning. You are not going to find a person that works harder and has more knowledge. So I'm thrilled. He's just a great person to have on staff.
I emailed him a couple weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, not expecting an answer till Monday morning. I got a phone call from him within a few minutes. I mean, this guy, he's really dedicated, so I'm looking for supporting this.
Totally is.
All right, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
2 seconds ago.
I did. Why you said that?
Yes.
Okay.
Your turn?
Oh, I had to get that up.
Didn't you want to have a comment about
No.
this answer?
No, not tonight. We'll have that conversation going forward. So we are adjourned. Oh.